Hey guys, how's it going? This is my first video to ever make, and this is already take two because my little dog started barking as soon as I started. Anyway, I decided to make a video for two reasons. Well, at least this video for two reasons. One, I kind of have been putting it off because I feel like it's awkward to sit here and just talk to a camera and to people that I don't know. But yesterday, my friend sent me this video from Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, and it was of an old acquaintance who had made this video and it just like blew up. It was on USA Today, they were talking about it, and it was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like, it was some rage rituals that I guess women are doing these days, and it's unbelievable that anybody even watches that. And so I told my kids, I was like, you know what, I know you're worried about me being cringy, and I know that I will be, but I can't be as cringy as that. Like, I'm not sitting here like beating my chest and beating sticks into the ground and roaring, so it can't be that bad, right? So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it tomorrow. So that was yesterday, and here I am. And the second reason is that I'm an admin of an expat group on Facebook. So we moved out of the US in the end of 2018. And I get so many questions of people wondering which country should we move to and how did you do this? And particularly because I have 3 kids, it's like, what is it like for your kids? What's moving like? How have they been moving out of their country of birth? So I kind of wanted to talk about moving. I call myself an immigrant because I don't plan to ever go back, and I know that apparently white people can't be immigrants, but I am a white immigrant. I suppose you can be an expat if you want to, but this is specifically for North Americans who want to leave North America. So when we left in 2018, of course there were people that moved out of the country. I think there were more of retirees that left, or at the time digital nomad wasn't as much of a thing as it is now, especially given COVID, when so many things went online. There's so many more digital nomads today, and there's so many more countries that you can move to as a digital nomad. But back then, it's like, why are you leaving? Why would anyone leave the greatest country in the world? Now, I'm from the United States, but I'm just kind of clumping North America all in one. And I will use the word gringo or gringa because we call ourselves Americans, and people don't like that because everyone in all of the Americas could be American, so I'll just say gringo or gringa. But I just had so many people say, why would you leave the greatest country in the world? And it was really funny when we first moved because there were so many people that were like, do you have internet in South America? Do you have dirt floors? Are you in the jungle? We weren't in the jungle. We weren't even in a tropical location. Actually, it was quite chilly where we moved. We did have internet connection because we worked online, and we did not have dirt floors. I actually knew more people with dirt floors in the US than I do in South America. Of course, there's some neighborhoods that probably have dirt floors, but we've never lived there. So I kind of wanted to talk about why we moved. I actually shared this story for the first time in years. Just a few days ago, I met some gringos from the US, and they were like just visiting, and they were backpackers and coming down to climb and do some backpacking and things like that. And they were like, oh, you live here, why do you move? And I said, well, it's kind of a funny story because I was homeschooling at the time, and my kids were doing Ron Paul curriculum. And one of the things that they needed to do as they got older, they were 7 and 9, and then I had a 2-year-old at the time, or maybe she was 1 at the time, I don't know. But as they got older, they had to start a business, and they were supposed to make a profit with their business. And being the libertarian that I am, I was like, let's just start talking about it in advance, because it's really important to create your own business and to start doing things when you're young so that you're not just completely lost when you graduate from high school and don't know how to do anything. And so I said, guys, start thinking about what kind of business you would like to do, and I can help you facilitate it. You need to come up with a plan, and we can do this. Not having any idea what they would want to do. And so I guess they went and talked about it for a while, and one day they said, Mommy, we know what we want to do for our business. And I was like, great, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to start a snow cone stand in Uruguay. And I was like, what? That's cute, and that's really funny. We're not going to do that. And why Uruguay of all places? I mean, we had visited there before, but it was a really funny choice for 7 and 9-year-old kids. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, but why? We homeschool and there's a reason that we do it so they can have these kinds of experiences. And I kind of came around to the idea, and at the time I had a private practice. I'm a clinical mental health counselor, and so I had a private practice, and really I worked for myself, and it was possible to go to online sessions a little bit. And back then, like I said, it was less common than it is now, but it was possible because I still had my licensure in the state that we were living in, and I could do phone or video sessions. Probably not indefinitely, but it was something that I was able to do. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So I told my husband, and he kind of had my same initial reaction of, no, why would you do that? That's insane. So we talked about it, and we kind of came to the conclusion of, we're gonna try it for 3 months. Like, we'll go down, we'll start a business really quickly, and then hopefully we'll make a profit, and then we'll come back. So I call my cousin up, I'm like, hey, you wanna start a snow cone stand with me in Uruguay? And the kids and I were gonna go down for 2 months, and then my husband was gonna join us the 3rd month, and then we were all planning to come back to the US. Well, we got there, and like, I don't know, the first week or two, I had 3 dreams in a row. And in every dream, there was some sort of global sickness that was coming. And remember, this is 2018. There was some sort of global sickness coming, and I knew that we weren't supposed to go back to the US. And I called my husband, I said, hey, when you come, bring a really big suitcase because we're planning to stay. And he did work online, so it was something that was possible, but he had never been to South America before, ever. The kids, well, the 2 older kids and I had been, but he hadn't. So he was just kind of like, I mean, I knew I married someone that didn't do things normally, but okay, this is crazy. So he comes down, and I end up having to enroll the kids in school because homeschooling is illegal, it's still illegal. And we just kind of started proceeding in that way, and it ended up being just the best decision that we ever made. I mean, we didn't plan to be expats, we didn't plan to be immigrants, we didn't plan to stay, it's just what happened. So we weren't the people that, you know, had this whole plan and decided to sell our house and, you know, went through all the procedures in advance like most people do. But nonetheless, we did end up selling our house from afar during the pandemic because we couldn't really get back easily. And it ended up being that Uruguay, where we lived, was one of the only countries in the world that never really shut down. We never had any sort of COVID lockdowns or anything like that. I mean, the shopping malls pretty much stayed open the whole time. The restaurants stayed open the whole time. There were some government buildings that shut down. I don't remember exactly in my kids' school. I think they shut down for something like 4 weeks. Maybe my daughter in high school was shut down a little bit longer at the time, but it was nothing like these kids were out of school for a year. And actually, so many people from Argentina moved to Uruguay. I think the number was around 30,000 because their kids were just out of school for up to a year and a half, just locked in apartments in the city, and it was pretty awful. So we ended up being in probably one of the best places in the world to live. So now, post-pandemic, people are constantly asking, why did you move? And we're looking at, I don't know, Portugal or Colombia or Panama or Costa Rica or Argentina or Paraguay or Uruguay. How do we decide? What do we do? And so that's kind of why I wanted to make a video. So obviously everyone's different, and that's what I try to tell people. So I think that what we did is we kind of made a list of what we wanted in a country once we decided to, you know, permanently stay out of the US. And, you know, you have to decide, do I want to fit in? What does that look like for me? Do I want people to always know that I'm not a local, or do I want to fit in? For us, we wanted to fit in, or I wanted to fit in particularly because this is my kids' new country. And I don't want them to always feel foreign. I don't want them to always stand out because I think it makes you a target. So for us, that was really important. Weather was really important. I don't want to be somewhere that is always having earthquakes or always having hurricanes. So Chile, for example, they have a lot of volcanoes, and there's a lot of problems with that, and I don't like volcanoes. I don't want to have to deal with that. So I think they also have earthquakes there. I forget. They have a lot of natural disasters. And so as I'm making the list, I'm realizing at the time that Uruguay checks all the boxes for us. And my boxes will be different than your boxes, and that's fine. Education was a big one. I liked the education there. I liked the healthcare there. It was a really great system. There were really good doctors. And I liked the freedom there. I mean, I'm a libertarian, and they have a big flag that says Libertad o Muerte, like liberty or death. And oh my gosh, I hate using Spanish in this because I definitely am a gringa and my Spanish isn't great. Language is another one. I mean, moving somewhere that has a really difficult language, my kids would probably learn, but I probably would never be able to get by because I'm just not linguistically gifted in learning other languages, I have found out over the last years. And so once you kind of make this list of pros and cons and where you want to go, I think it's important to visit. I think it's important to talk to other expats or immigrants. And I think it's important to figure out what you need to do to actually move to the country. It's funny because I'm in all these expat groups online now, and one of the big things that people who are already expats or already immigrants say when their friends contact them is, people in North America just don't realize that you have to do anything. You can't just move somewhere. So you have to get visas, you have to get residencies. There's so many things that you have to do in order to move to a country. So it's important to contact a lawyer, talk with other expats, figure out what they did to move. There's retiree visas. There's, like I said, digital nomad, which personally, I don't like the digital nomad visas for a lot of reasons, which I'm not going to talk about, but there's a lot of different ways that you can move to countries. And also looking, do I want a citizenship in this country? Do I have kids? Do I want this to be their country that we're moving to, that I want them to assimilate to? And I just see, I've known over the years a lot of people that have moved. And one of the things that I want to caution people about is you need to know why you're moving. I think that, when people want to do sales or marketing or whatever, people always say, well, what's your why? And I think that's important as an immigrant as well, because if you don't really know why you're moving, like maybe you're just unhappy in the US, or maybe you want to save money, which, all these things are okay, but if you don't have a really secure why, I think you won't make it. And if you're not really determined to stick it out at least 2 years, I think you'll go back. Because the first year is really hard. So I'm in my second country now, and I was in Uruguay for 5 years, and now I'm in another country, and this is my second year. And it reminded me when I moved again, that first year is tough. Everything about it is hard, and if you don't really know why you're there, it's so much easier to just say, well, I'm just giving up and I'm going back. But in our experience, sticking it out and going into that second year and that third year was really life-changing, because it was exactly what we needed, exactly what we wanted, and it was all worth it. Even though there were moments in that first year where I look back and I'm like, how did I make it? I remember my husband was working in the States and coming back and forth, and I was there with the kids, going from homeschooling to putting them into school, language barriers, problems that they were encountering that they didn't know what to do. And I just cried myself to sleep every night. I was like, why am I doing this? But I remembered that working in mental health, I realized I never actually wanted my kids to go to a school in the US. It was homeschool or nothing, because schools are absolutely toxic there. I mean, I am anti-woke everything, and that is not how I wanted my kids to grow up. It is not the environment that I wanted my kids to be in, and I was not going to allow it. I was not going to raise kids that thought that they suddenly were a fox. We're not doing that. That's not our family values. That's not who we are. And I am taking my kids out of the environment where that occurs, because that's just not something that we're going to do. And if that makes people mad, that's just too bad, because we move to a place that has family values. We move to a place that values time with other people and values connection and values community. And those are important to me. And so regardless of how hard the days could have been, because I had language fatigue all the time. Living your life in another language that you don't yet speak or understand is really hard. And I was exhausted of it all the time. And I still get language fatigue. Like, I understand Spanish basically fluently. I don't speak it fluently. I can communicate, but I'm not fluent. It's not simple for me like it is for my kids now. But in the beginning, it was tough. I remember like going through the airport and I needed to go to immigration and I didn't know where it was. And I'm like, what is the word for immigration? I couldn't even think like migraciones, which is basically the same word. And I was just like, I'm never gonna get this. And I remember asking people, because we're real friendly in the US and we want to say like, have a good day. And I remember asking at this one shop, like, how do I say have a good day? And I had to ask her like 5 times before I got it right. And it's just something so simple, but I could not get it. And so I had to remember, like, I want to raise my kids here because first of all, I had these dreams, but second of all, this is the culture that I want my kids to grow up in. I don't want them to feel like they are a problem or an inconvenience like so many families act like kids are in the US. And I want them to have a joyful childhood. And I don't want them to feel the stress that they feel in the US. And I don't want them around violence. And I don't want them in a country that's been at war literally their whole life. That's not what I want for them. I don't want consumerism. I want them to appreciate the things around them. I want them to sit and look at the ocean and not be on their phone and enjoy it. And they do. And I think that it was all worth it, but it was really hard. So now I know after COVID, and I know like with all of the inflation that's happening in the US and Canada, I mean, I don't even know what you guys are doing up there in Canada. I don't know what you guys are doing in the US either. I look politically, people are so angry and everyone's so divided, and why? Why put yourself and your family in that? I used to just want to sit and fight for what I believed in the US, and I thought that was important. And then my kids started growing up and I realized there's a chance that no matter how strong of a person I am, I could lose my kids to like this insane culture war that has just broken out on all levels. And when we moved in 2018, I saw it because I worked at a university. And I'll never forget, like, this was in 2016 that I worked at the university when I was pregnant with my youngest. And we had to ask people what pronoun they wanted to use back in 2016 in higher education. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, you're obviously a man. I'm going to refer to you as a man. I do not need to ask you what pronoun you use. Like, this is ludicrous. And this was in the mental health section of the university. Like, these are the people that are supposed to, like, set the bar for what is mentally healthy. Are you kidding me? And I remember, like, going to group meetings and they would be like, what's your favorite population to work with and why is it the LGBTQ community? And I'm like, it's not. And everyone's jaw would like hit the ground and I was like, no, this is not where I want my kids to go. This is not what I want for my kids. And so being an immigrant has been great for us. My oldest she's coming close to finishing high school now. And she's not been exposed to, any of those things. And she's not in a religious school. She's in just a regular school. And, my middle just started high school this year, and it's a different world. In my oldest, like, there's not really kids that are dating yet, for example, and there's not kids that are having kids yet. And, it's different, and there's no angst, there's no fear when they go to school. Every time a school shooting or something happens in the US, it's like you're just filled with this dread. And it took me probably 2 years to stop feeling like I need to fight everything and that I'm, when something happens, I'm angry about it. And I remember my husband moving down, like, he fully came down a year after me. And I remember, like, listening to him talk about politics in the same way that I used to. And I was like, but who cares? We don't live there anymore. Like, who cares? It's not the same here. It's not so, like, nothing's so loaded as it is in the US or even in Canada, because it's like you're always having to, like, fight against something. And here it's like people can come together and people can respect each other, and it's just been a really great experience. But my caution is, if you don't know your why and you're not happy where you are, just because you're not happy, you're not going to be happy when you come to another location, because it's going to be hard. So if you want to move out of the country and you want to become an expat or you want to become an immigrant, know that it's going to be hard, and you're going to have a learning curve on everything, and you're going to have to give up things about yourself that have always been there, because you have to integrate and you have to assimilate into a new culture. You cannot come here and be the same person that you were in the place where you came from. Like, you cannot bring your politics here. Like, you want to talk about like Republican or Democrat or liberal and conservative. I mean, liberal and conservative exist in a sense, but the agendas are different. So I just wanted to kind of do an intro on like our story and just some different ideas about moving to another country and why, and things that you can think about if you're considering moving to another country. And also, a lot of people ask about my kids, so I'm going to try to get my kids in front of the camera and see if they can share their experiences. And I can't promise that it's all going to be positive, but I think in general and overall, they've all had really positive experiences, even though there's been things that have been hard. And so yeah, I would love to be able to share their experiences as well.